Good morning, everyone. My name is Kira Fanikak, and I'm a client development consultant with Thomas International. I'm here to take you through the fourth installment of our Thomas Insight series called Staying Motivated While Working Remotely. So we're really going to focus on how can we, while we're dealing with this new change in working environment, keep that motivation going and keeping ourselves motivated. If you're interested in looking more into how to keep your team engaged, we'll also have a follow-up session next week on that. So what do I do at Thomas? As a client development consultant and psychometrist at Thomas International, what I do is to help our clients through combining technology, psychology, and data to enable them to better understand their people and unlock their potential. And that's what we want to focus on today as well. So using the assessments that you guys did with the PPA and the TQ, and using that to understand our own motivations and how to stay motivated. So for the purposes of today, I'm going to switch off my video while presenting, just for the interest of a stable internet connection. And then as we go through, if you have any questions or anything pops up in your mind that you want to talk about, please put it in the chat box. We've got Thomas consultants that can help you if it's an immediate question, or at the end of the session, we're going to have a Q&A, and we're going to discuss some of those questions that come up during the session. So for today's agenda, we'll be doing the following. We're first going to go look into remote working. So look at the benefits and the challenges that are associated with that. Then we're going to look at understanding motivation itself. So finding out, okay, but what does it actually mean if we talk about staying motivated? What are we really looking for? Then we're going to discuss how your behavioral and personality profiles can affect your motivation using the assessment tools that you've already done. And then looking at practical tips to stay motivated while working remotely. So let's first start with remote working, looking at the benefits versus the challenges that come into play when we're remote working. So today's business landscape sees millions of people working remotely. Research clearly shows the benefits of working in a remote or distributed context. People are more productive, they experience a better work-life balance, and they save organizations money on office space and equipment. You also save yourself time and money on driving back and forth to the office, and we leave a smaller environmental footprint, just to name a few of the benefits. Laurel Farrer, a remote work strategist and advocate, outlines the benefits for companies and teams. She identified such things as easier scaling, expanded recruiting pool, and employee retention as benefits. Painting an even broader picture, Farrer notes that global benefits such as economic stimulation and environmental sustainability take place with remote working. Indeed, remote working can provide benefits for both productivity and employee well-being when it is managed well. In addition, advances in communication technology have greatly contributed to the achievement of these benefits. Remote working, fueled by technology, is becoming increasingly common in the workplace. An estimate from the Office of National Statistics in the United Kingdom estimated that 50% of workers in the UK will be working remotely by 2020, which is where we are now. Obviously, with the lockdown, I think those numbers have increased, but generally, even without the quarantine, we would have seen these numbers. A report by Upwork in the US estimates that by 2027, the majority of the workforce will be freelancers, so aka remote working. But to be clear, there are challenges associated with remote working as well, and this is reported by individuals and organizations alike. Previous research revealed some of those challenges, such as the potential feelings of loneliness and isolation, the reality that we're all at a virtual distance, work boundaries, so when do I actually switch on and switch off if my office is my home and it kind of sort of blends into each other. And then effective management of time. So am I really working the best I could with my time, or am I letting a lot of distractions come into play with kids at the home, things like that. As well, it is important for managers to understand that managing those working in a remote context is not the same as doing so in a traditional office environment. Performance management can be more difficult when people are not physically present, requiring communication that is more intentional with clearly defined performance management criteria. Without effective communication and relevant performance management, remote workers can struggle to work effectively and may not realize the benefits of the intended flexibility and autonomy. While inadequate technology can create a barrier to success for the remote worker, ongoing advances in communication technology have made a great difference over the years in how remote work is being done. And then a final comment regarding challenges in remote work is that not everyone is equally effective in the same work environment. While some people are fully able to manage themselves and their performance when they work independently, others can struggle with less clarity and oversight in a workplace setting. Personality traits and behavioral profiles can explain to us how people behave, act, and feel in the workplace, and they can help to explain which environments can be most productive for different people, as well as how they can keep themselves motivated. Let's spend a little bit of time on understanding motivation. Why is understanding motivation important? Why do we care about what people want and why they want it? Well, how about because it can really improve our lives? Learning about motivation is valuable because it helps us understand where motivation comes from, why it changes, what increases or decreases it, and what aspects can or cannot be changed. And it helps us answer the question of why some types of motivation can be more beneficial to us than others. Motivation reflects something unique about each one of us and allows us to gain valued outcomes like improved performance, enhanced well-being, personal growth, or a sense of purpose. Motivation is a pathway to change our way of thinking, feeling, and behaving. So finding ways to increase motivation is crucial because it allows us to change behavior, develop competencies, be creative, set goals, grow our interests, and make plans, as well as developing our talents and boosting engagement. Applying motivational science to everyday life helps us to motivate employees, coach athletes, raise children, counsel clients, and engage students. The benefits of motivation are visible in how we live our lives. As we are constantly responding to changes in our environment, we need motivation to take corrective action in the face of fluctuating circumstances. Motivation is a vital resource that allows us to adapt, function properly, and maintain well-being in the face of a constantly changing stream of opportunities and threats. And I think that's something that we're all quite aware of now, especially with the current climate that we're in. There are many health benefits of increased motivation. Motivation as a psychological state is linked to our physiology. When our motivation is depleted, our functioning and well-being suffers. Some studies show that when we feel helpless in exerting control, for example, we tend to give up quickly when challenged. Others have proven that when we find ourselves coerced, we lose access to our inner motivational resources. And in some ways, our current situation is definitely coercing. High-quality motivation allows us to thrive, while its deficit causes us to flounder. So societal benefits of increased motivation are also visible in greater student engagement, better job satisfaction employees, flowering relationships, and flourishing institutions. So how do our profiles affect motivation? So I'm going to start with your behavioral profile. I'm just going to do a brief overview of our two different assessments as well. So here we can see that behavior versus personality diagram that if you attended our other sessions, you're probably quite familiar with already. So the reason why we look at the two assessments is we first look at what do others see with the PPA. These are the observable behaviors, the body language, the physical demeanor, the way the person comes across on a Zoom call, the shortness of the email. But then we can look beneath the surface at the TQ, the Traits Emotional Intelligence Questionnaire, to see what are some of those underlying factors that are the source of those behaviors. So the actions we conduct ourselves and observing those around us come from within, and that comes from the TQ elements as well. It's a combination of nature and nurture, how we react to our environment. And we can't necessarily change these base aspects of ourselves that guide our motivations. However, if we're aware of it and we're aware of how they affect us, that can allow us to utilize them as self-awareness tools. A brief overview of the PPA. So in the late 1950s and early 1960s, Dr. Thomas Hendrickson developed Marston's disc theory to produce the Thomas PPA for the workplace. Thomas Personal Profile Analysis, the PPA, is a behavioral profile that gives us that insight into how people behave at work. The PPA determines whether individuals see themselves as responding to workplace situations that they perceive to be favorable or challenging, and reveals whether their response patterns are active or passive. So what does this look like in terms of the DISC, the 4 different factors? So if I perceive my situation as being hostile or more antagonistic, then I might have the dominance or the compliance style. If I have an active response, that's characteristic of dominance. So you may be someone that can be perceived as being a bit more assertive, competitive, direct in achieving your goals. You're someone that's also quite driving, forceful, and inquisitive as a self-starter. If you view your situation in a hostile manner but take a more passive response, you may be someone with the compliance style. Therefore, you can come across as a bit more accurate, careful, compliant, logical, perfectionistic at times, precise, and systematic, ticking off all those boxes to make sure everything's right in case something goes wrong. But some people view the world as more of a friendly or favorable place. This would be indicative of the influence and the steadiness styles. So if you have the influence style, you'll likely be someone that comes across as communicative, friendly, influential, persuasive, positive, and verbal. You feel that you can have that active approach to make friends around you because they will want to be your friends, therefore the friendly or favorable. With steadiness style, therefore you're likely to be someone that comes across as a bit more amiable because now it's a bit more of a passive response. So it's not that outgoing friendliness per se, but it's more of that kind team player focus to support those around you. You may also come across as deliberate, dependable, methodical, thorough, and persistent. And each of these behavioral styles also guides what motivates us. Now, you might have one of these behavioral styles as your working strength, as your main factor, but you might have a combination. So let's look at what those motivators look like and the effect of remote working on them. So if you have the dominant style, your motivators will include the following. You probably want some power or authority over how you achieve your results. You like tangible, measurable, achievable results as well. Again, you're driven by getting those results, so you want something that's able to be achieved. Probably enjoy challenging assignments, so something you have to strive against to win at, and opportunity for advancement. You're likely to be someone that likes to know why and likes to have a wide scope operation to look at that inquisitive nature. You like direct answers, so get straight to the point, let me chase the result. And you might like freedom from controls, supervision, and detail. You're also someone that's probably going to be motivated by the efficiency of operation as well, and new and varied activities. So what does this look like in the remote working context? So if we look at some of the strengths, those include the drive to accomplish results. You're likely going to be the person in the team that's going to be good at challenging yourself and others, making those decisions. You're also likely going to bring the strength of getting results and expediting action, speeding up the pace. So therefore, it's very important to focus on the following. Look at your levels of self-motivation in your TQ. See how much external motivation might you need that you might not be getting as you usually do. Create check-ins to hold yourself accountable. So create check-ins with your manager or your team members to keep you accountable, as you don't really enjoy the detail and the follow-through as much as the idea and the result. Also, set yourself small challenges with clear goals. This allows you to have the small wins that are more frequent, especially if what you're used to achieving isn't as easy because of the remote working and the lockdown. Maybe some of your clients aren't available. Now, if you have the influence style, you probably want the following. You're probably someone that likes popularity or social recognition. You also want public recognition to indicate your ability. So sort of knowing that I've been recognized by someone else can help you measure, am I actually doing a good job? Do I have the ability? Probably like freedom of speech or people to talk to, and favorable working conditions. You're someone that may enjoy group activities outside of the job, democratic relationships, and then you also probably enjoy freedom from control and detail. You're also someone that likes to feel good about the job at hand. And keep in mind with our current situation, the working conditions are easily perceived as not being favorable, and that's one of your motivators that might not be there as per usual. So how does this tie in then? If we look at strengths, one of the key strengths is influencing people to act. So you're likely to be someone that is making the favorable impressions, even with your clients within this time, radiating optimism about your product, about your team. You're likely someone that's going to be able to generate enthusiasm and cultivate relationships as well. Therefore, it's very important to focus on the following to make sure you stay motivated. Creating opportunities for recognition. So create opportunities with your manager, tell them what you're doing at the moment, and create that ability to get recognition in a way that's different, but then you're not lacking the recognition that might come from standing around in the cafeteria or by the water cooler, discussing something and then getting that recognition. You may struggle with long periods of concentration, so it's very important to ask, have you got enough variety to keep yourself challenged? Then also have regular contact with your co-workers, clients, and people to feel that you're getting that people element, that people energy that you might prefer to get. Then if you have the steadiness factor, there we can see you're probably someone that wants a bit more of the status quo. You want to have security of situation and historical procedures that you kind of can harken back to. Probably are motivated by a happy home life and sincerity with those around you. So your recognition needs to be sincere, have some facts behind it for it to feel valuable. You probably also are motivated by having some time to adjust to change in a known territory. Also, constant appreciation can be involved and identification with the company that you're involved with. You're also going to be motivated by recognition for long service as well. If you think about our current situation, your security has been definitely rocked because the security of the South African situation is different than it usually is. So therefore, historical procedures in known territory aren't as reliable. So what are the strengths that you bring into the team with remote working? First and foremost, they'll be delivering consistency through process and teams. So you're going to be someone who's going to be good at getting people to concentrate at the job at hand and complete work thoroughly. You're likely to be quite persistent and have a methodical approach to your workload, even in this time. So therefore, it's important to focus on encouraging yourself to make regular contact with the team. Now, you might not want to be as out there with it as the influencers in your team. You might not want to be the center of attention, but you still like to feel like you're part of the team. So encouraging yourself to make that contact will give you that sense of security. Devise clear plans for yourself, including the possibility for change. So plan out your days, but also create ways for yourself to maybe prioritize or plan certain elements of your day to be the change times. So that you can have a possibility for change, a bit more flexibility in your structure. And then also manage expectations in terms of deadlines. Ask for that clarity when it comes to deadlines so you know what the deadline is to make sure that you're able to meet it and able to keep that happy environment that you're looking for. Then with the compliance style, you're likely to be someone that wants the standard operating procedures. You want your exposure to be limited to your area of expertise, and security but protection through rules. So security for steadiness is about feeling belonging, where security for compliance is more about security knowing what's right and wrong, what are my limits, what do we need to do here. That's where the rules come in. You want references and reassurance when going with a new task or getting new information, and you want authorized and agreed changes. You like to be part of the group and get personal attention. So whereas the influence or the dominance profile might prefer a bigger amount of people with that attention, you like that one-on-one personal attention, especially from your manager. You also want the opportunity to perform competently at what you're doing. If you think about our current context, exposure might not be as limited as it used to be, and standard operating procedures might have had to be changed. So compliance is a working strength while remote working. So you bring into play working with policies and standards. So if there are lots of policies that are having to be revised at this moment, you might be the person to involve. So you'll be able to concentrate on the detail, monitor and control what needs to happen. You're also going to bring in that improving quality and standards as well as fact finding and assessing the risks involved. So there might be some changes coming into play because of the remote working, but you'll be good at assessing the risks involved with them. But then it's important to focus on a few things. Keep ahead of changes and plans. So ask questions for clarity. So if you are in that meeting discussing what the next steps are, don't just sit there and listen. Ask the questions if you feel you don't have enough information to be aware of what's going to happen. Even though you may not be a people seeker, you still need inclusion. So again, taking part in maybe virtual lunches or taking part in some of the team activities could still be very important for you. It might not be your natural focus, but it's going to help you feel like there's a bit more security as well. Make sure deadlines don't slip and detail required is explained. So there it's about making sure that you are fully aware, again, asking for that clarity, and make sure that you're giving the level of detail so that you can give that accurate work that you like to, rather than be demotivated by any conflict that might arise from you not having achieved what was set out. So now we discuss the personality profile and how it affects motivation. So we've discussed what happens with behavior, but now let's look a little bit deeper and see how does that affect motivation as well. What is emotional intelligence? So emotional intelligence is balancing logic and emotion, head and heart. We're looking at that self-awareness to see, am I aware of how I approach certain things to do with people? Is it about my relationships with others? Is it with this greater social context? Am I aware of how I adapt in certain situations? This we assess through the Trait Emotional Intelligence Questionnaire. So here you can see the TQ wheel. The Trait Emotional Intelligence Questionnaire, the TQ, is based on 15 emotional traits. We've got 4 larger emotional factors, as well as 1 overall score. And all these scores and the reflections are compared to a group of others, i.e. the working population of South Africa, to provide context. So we look at where those different traits and facets fall to see, am I responding to this trait like most people? Do I have lower levels or higher levels? So I'm going to discuss a few of these different factors and facets, not all of them, but the key ones that can really influence your motivation during this time. So when we look at the well-being factor, it's made up of self-esteem, happiness, and optimism. So self-esteem is about, do you feel successful? Do you feel self-confident? What are your levels of self-regard? Happiness looks at how cheerful or satisfied you are with your life at this current time. Then optimism looks at how confident or likely to look on the bright side of life you are. So these are the 3 elements that make up the well-being factor. And it's important to note they're the most influenced by your current context. Think about happiness. If I'm looking at where I am presently, it's definitely affected by your present context. And optimism can be affected if every projection you get from the news cycle is negative. So let's first focus on happiness. So the impact on motivation with low happiness. So research has shown that with a lack of face-to-face interaction, employees might feel that their managers don't quite understand their needs from a distance, which can result in less productivity and less supportive behaviors. Transitioning to work from home, individuals with lower scores in happiness may be feeling less content and cheerful with life at the moment, as well as more worried about the current situation. At the same time, they may also feel their mood is a reasonable response to the difficulties of COVID-19. Viewing life in a less upbeat way can allow them to see the worst that might happen and avoid it. So what can we do? Focus on the aspects that you can control. So it's very easy to get caught up in the news cycle, get caught up in the greater scheme of things. However, you could not control that before and you cannot control it now. So focus on the aspects of your life that you can control currently. Make an effort to identify good things that happen daily. So this can be in the form of gratitude journal. It can be in the form of just noticing the things around you. Understand what brings you joy. So what are the things that really actually make you feel quite happy? Can be watching series, can be listening to the radio, listening to your favorite piece of music, or it could be sitting outside or just having a little bit of sun. But understanding what brings you joy allows you to ensure that you do things to promote happiness in your environment. Then you can start building it as part of your routine, which we'll go a bit more in depth into later, to help you feel that you have a bit more control and have more positive emotions around you. Low optimism can also have an impact. So generally, individuals with low optimism may struggle to see the positives of a new work environment. And again, especially if we have negative projections of the future in terms of our news cycles and with the government, that can definitely influence how we view the future in terms of that optimism level as well. So what can we do? It's important to focus on opportunities that remote working can bring. And we discussed a little bit of it before. You can save money by not having to travel back and forth to the office every day. Low environmental impact, being able to maybe skip makeup one of the days of the week, or being able to spend more time at home with your family. Seek out team members or friends that have eye optimism. So it's pretty easy to notice the people around you that tend to have this happy-go-lucky approach and feel that there's always opportunities in the future. So seek out these team members instead of dismissing, but as ways to sort of bring up that optimism in yourself. Let it be a bit infectious. Talk through what makes them feel optimistic about remote working, because then you can start picking up, oh, well, then maybe I can feel optimistic about those same things. And then low self-esteem can also definitely have an impact on motivation. So individuals with low scores will set high and potentially unachievable standards for themselves. Then, when you're unable to reach them, you can be quite harsh on yourself. So research has shown that home demands can make working from home much harder at times. There will be some projects that you won't be able to complete or cannot complete to the high standards that you may have for yourself. And this can create more feelings of stress and disappointment, which can now feed into the other factors we've already discussed. So what can we do to address this? Give yourself time to think projects through. Now, thinking those projects through will allow you to see, okay, is this feasible? Is this something I can achieve? What's going on in my life that might be hindering that? To give yourself realistic timescales and realistic standards. Remind yourself that it is okay to say no to new tasks occasionally. It will not show anything on your ability, but rather you need to put yourself as a priority at times as well. Identify how to break larger tasks apart into small wins. So to boost that self-esteem as well, if you have smaller wins, you're going to see that you actually are achieving a little bit more than you might think you're achieving, because your natural view of yourself might be in a more negative light. So those were the well-being factors that really are quite important to note. Now, in the self-control factor, one of the factors we'll also go a bit more in depth into. But the self-control factors involved with emotion regulation. So are you capable of controlling your emotion? Stress management. So how do you withstand the pressure and regulating of stress in an anxiety-filled environment? And impulse control. So how reflective you are, and are you less likely to give in to your urges than others? So the important facet to look at here is stress management, as low stress management definitely can have an impact on motivation. So employees with low stress management scores will feel a lot of stress easily. Particularly, the new remote environment will introduce new stresses ranging from different working conditions to having to share your working space with family members and being distracted or unable to concentrate. Or, on the other hand, the fear of being isolated if you live on your own. So what can we do to address this? Ensure you have a productive working setup at home. Borrow monitors or keyboards, or reach out to your organization to get this. This can help you feel that there's less things that can cause you to not achieve, thus reducing your stress. Make time in your schedule for stress-reducing activities, things like exercise, breathing, having a chat with a friend, etc. Depends on what works for you. Now, some people feel that a lot of their stress management techniques that they used to use, they can't really do now. So if I used to go to the gym every day, now I can't. But there's plenty of resources for at-home workouts that could work just as efficiently to physically reduce those feelings of stress. So make time and schedule it. Again, if we say, okay, I will work out today, or I will take a break today, that doesn't necessarily mean you will if things get a bit stressful, if you feel there's more things that you have to do. So there's more tasks coming in, more emails. But if you schedule that time, you set aside that time for yourself to be mindful in that moment and to actually de-stress. Then it's important to look at two facets in the emotionality factor. So just to briefly recap, the emotionality factor looks at the more interpersonal aspects of emotional intelligence. So things like emotion perception. So am I clear about my own and other people's feelings? Emotion expression, so how capable am I of communicating my feelings to others? Relationships, how confident or likely I am to really build those relationships. And empathy, how capable I am of taking someone else's perspective. So empathy's impact on motivation. So if you look at high empathy, these individuals feel other people's emotions and appreciate other people's feelings. They're able to take their views into account. This will be difficult in the current environment as you are likely to be hyper aware of other stress and worries. So it may make it hard for you to shut out and focus on your own emotions and well-being. So some things we can focus on. Focus on taking care of your own emotions and well-being rather than other people. It's very easy to get caught up in other people's feelings as you feel it strongly. You pick up on it quite quickly. But at the same time, that often means that you probably neglect your own. Schedule time to be away from the desk for rest, exercise, and socializing. So this ties a little bit into what we discussed with stress management as well. So scheduling time to be away also puts a boundary in terms of the work situation as well. Puts boundaries in terms of how many discussions you're going to have with people and delving into those emotions. Whereas if you take that break, you can focus a bit more on yourself. So if we look at relationships and their impact on motivation, so individuals with high scores in relationships like to invest time and energy in maintaining positive relationships. Such relationships ensure that they have a circle of people on whom they can rely on for a variety of things: information, social enjoyment, and emotional support in difficult circumstances. So when you have high relationships, it's important to make time for regular check-ins. So to feel that you've got that maintenance, that ability to chat to people and build that relationship, schedule that time for the regular check-ins with the people that are important. When conducting meetings, make sure to use your video. That will allow you to feel more connected as well. Ensure that you allocate separate time to work as well as time to check up on friends, because relationship cannot be the only focus. So that can also impact your motivation if now you're not achieving because now you're focusing so much time on relationships. So allocate that time. So, okay, from this time to that time, I'm going to work. And then from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the evening, I can check on friends. Maybe I'll have a catch-up call. Then lastly, we're going to look at 2 of the independent facets to see what their impact is on motivation as well. So the adaptability, it's about how flexible and willing I am to adapt to new conditions. And then with self-motivation, it's about how driven or unlikely I am to give up in the face of adversity. So if we look at adaptability, a general aversion to change is to be expected in individuals with low adaptability. So you may take more time and need more support to adapt to a new way of working. So a sudden change in routine like what we all went through will be hard to cope with at times. But one caused by a global pandemic is likely to cause a bit more of an extreme reaction. So ways to sort of manage the impact on motivation. Try to replicate your work routine while working remotely. So therefore you won't feel as strong a change. Yes, your environment has changed, but if you're still doing the same tasks that you used to do in similar ways, maybe you usually had a coffee at 10 o'clock every morning, try and replicate that at home as well. Then focus on the positive aspects of the change. What new opportunities are there? What skills are you learning? Are you saving money from not commuting? Now, this sounds kind of familiar. We talked a little bit about it with Optimism, but it definitely applies here as well. Because again, we need to look at, am I seeing only the negative in this change because I'm someone that doesn't really like that adaptability approach as much? Or is it all negative? And likely it isn't. So that's where focusing on those positive aspects can help as well. And then with self-motivation, individuals with low self-motivation often need a bit more of an extrinsic source of motivation, so a bit more external. So in a remote working environment, when there's no immediate reward or satisfaction from sharing a job well done, then even without the constant presence of a managerial figure to keep you motivated, you can sometimes struggle with motivation to get work done, which can cause procrastination and lack in productivity. So what can we focus on here? When you finish a task or achieve a goal, reward yourself. So this is an external reward that you can already give yourself to bring yourself back and feel a bit more motivated. Find ways to work with others to boost your motivation. So if you're finding yourself you're starting to lack a little bit, not really feeling that you have that drive that you usually do, find a way to involve someone in that project, whether it's just chatting over a 15-minute Zoom call to see what you can maybe do differently. Things like that can help boost your motivation and get you back up and running. And then likewise, use companionship and support to keep you going. So create those opportunities for you and your team members to swap ideas as well. So not just in a team setting on a specific project, but in general. So it could be, how are you guys making sure you don't work extra hours, or, you know, those little elements. Create those opportunities so that you can swap those ideas and feel that, okay, maybe this person is doing that way, I can use that, and getting that external drive or direction from that person. So we've talked about our profiles and how they affect us. So now I've put together some practical tips for us to stay motivated while working remotely. And some of these you might feel are more important to you, some you might feel not. But generally these are ones that are backed up with research as well, and they can tie into whatever your behavioral or personality profile suggests. So tip number 1, wake up early. So for many people, this may be the hardest part of working from home. So with no office to go to and no boss tapping his watch looking irritated if you're late, there can often be little motivation to get up at a reasonable hour and start work. So start training yourself to get up on time like you usually would at work. And this will help you get into a routine that encourages productivity. Studies have shown that getting up in the morning turns you into a more proactive person. And the morning hours often give us time to get to tasks that we may not be able to do during the day due to house obligations, especially if you have kids around the house that are now at home. That can also help give you some extra time in the mornings to address certain things, maybe run through all your emails that you might not have gotten to the previous day. Tip number 2, dress for success. So one of the biggest cliches about remote or home workers is that they're always working in their pajamas. But on a daily basis, a sloppy appearance can make for a sloppy work ethic. So getting dressed for work can actually help you to feel more prepared, professional, and even boost your confidence, even if you're not going to see a single coworker all day. You'll feel more like the real worker that you were used to being, that is achieving, and you will be more likely to do good work. So from a Forbes article that was published earlier by Dr. Karen Pine, who's professor of psychology at the University of Hertfordshire, she talked about this concept. So she said, when we put on an item of clothing, it is common for the wearer to adopt the characteristics associated with that garment. A lot of clothing has symbolic meaning for us, whether it's professional work attire or relaxing weekend wear. So when we put it on, we prime the brain to behave in ways consistent with that meaning. That's something that's quite important to note. Tip number 3, set up a dedicated work area. So no matter the place, finding your little quiet spot is essential to boost your remote productivity. So there are no limits to your imagination of where you want to work, but 2 aspects should be prioritized in the context of choosing your spot: tranquility and space. It's also important to look at trying not to work where you sleep. So working where you sleep can cause quite a lot of stress, actually, to have the place where you do all of your work also be the very spot where you try to relax and fall asleep at night. So try and have separations. If you are in a small space where you cannot have a different room, at least try to not work on the bed where you sleep to give a bit more of that separation. Tip number 4, be consistent in your routine. So success rewards consistency. And this seems relatively self-explanatory, but most people will not be able to function properly working from home if they don't have at least some sort of regimented schedule guiding them. This can start with waking up at a set time, like I mentioned before, waking up early, but also translates into whatever you need to get done during a certain day. So there can be scheduling your lunch hours, sharing your frequent breaks, and things like that. Tip number 5, get organized. You might not realize it, but a messy, disorganized space hinders your ability to think and work effectively. If your workspace is messy, things like finding files or items you need takes just a little bit longer, and the visual noise can be distracting. The amount of time distraction might be minimal on a daily basis, but when you add it up over weeks, months, and potentially years, it can have a big effect on your output. So it's worth taking the time to organize your work area. Keep a reasonably neat desk and try to keep the icons on your computer or laptop as organized as possible. You'll probably find it makes your life a lot easier. Tip number 6, take breaks. You might think that it shows a better work ethic to power through the day without pause, but this couldn't be further from the truth. If you don't take breaks, you'll be more likely or susceptible to distraction and probably won't be producing your best work. When you notice that you're lagging or uninspired, sometimes taking 5 can actually help revive your work ethic, can help you return to the task at hand with new focus, allowing you to stay on track. If you notice that you experience lulls at a certain time of day, try and take breaks at those times. So if you often feel around 3 o'clock, you just have no energy and you can barely read this email, you've read it 5 times, maybe that's the time you should take a break and have like a 15-minute workout, a cat nap, whatever's going to work for you. Or even just a cup of coffee. So tip number 7, get off social media. So are you constantly clicking over to Facebook when your work gets boring, or are the notifications or the dings and bells from your phone keeping you from concentrating what you're doing? Well, when a task becomes tedious, annoying, or boring, the admin elements of a work that some people may not enjoy, it's quite easy to just click over to your favorite blog, social media, Facebook, WhatsApp. So if you're trying to complete a project, try to reduce the potential distractions so that they don't tempt you. For instance, you might put your phone on airplane mode for certain hours of the day, or if you can't do that, you might turn off certain chat programs on your computer if you need to focus. And you can put do not disturb times in your diary, for example. If necessary, set a timer for every few hours so that you can have scheduled social media breaks. Tip number 8, video chat a work colleague. So when we can't find a motivation, sometimes that just means we're craving some human connection. So get on a video chat with a work colleague or someone in the daily remote work grind like you and chat about what you're working on. A friendly face and some actual human interaction can really do wonders for your energy levels. And lastly, tip number 9, be accountable to yourself and to others. So especially for first-timers, accountability is of paramount importance. So if you work from home, remind your partner or your roommate of your working schedule. They can help you stay accountable as well. And then also put some routine as well. So be proactive and tell people what you've done today and ensure your team's accountability as well. Create that as part of your check-ins with each other. Small lapses in productivity are manageable if you discuss them earlier on. But if you feel you cannot talk to your team, if you're not opening up about something that you're really struggling to get done, it can result in a much bigger upset down the line. So be accountable with each other, which will just put you in a better light and your organization, and again, help you be more motivated because you have the support of people around you. So that is it for the content of our session. So I've discussed the different profiles that we may have, how they can influence us in terms of how we come across, what motivates us, and I've given some practical tips as well. So now this is the Q&A session time. So please feel free to pop questions in the chat box. I'm going to read through them now. We can answer and then we can discuss a little bit. So I'm just going to put on my video as well. You guys can see me, and then I'm going to open up the chat. So we have a question. What is the best approach to take to ask my manager to engage in different behaviors to help keep me motivated? Well, one approach would be use your assessments. So you have the assessments results. It's backed up by scientific data. It's something that is tangible that you can read with your manager and discuss with them. Also come from a place of asking them to enable you to achieve for them. So if you take it from the approach of, okay, I need these certain behaviors to be motivated in order to be able to really give you the product that you want, most managers will probably take that as a positive reaction. If you take it as a learning opportunity with your manager for coaching or development, they're much more likely to change their approach to you or help you to be more productive. If that didn't answer your question, please let me know and you can pop it in the chat. So another question is, how can I distinguish between an employee who's disengaged or an employee who's not motivated? So one of the clear ways to do that is to see, is their behavior changing lately? So take a bit of time to check in and see, okay, this person is usually the person that has a few comments to add when we have a virtual discussion. Maybe if in an email string, they usually reply to something. If that's not happening, that's a clear sign that there's something going on, some change in behavior has taken place. Another good way to distinguish is actually making the time. So having those check-ins, if you think about the different profiles, if you had someone with more steadiness or compliance in their profile, have it be regularly scheduled check-ins that do not change. Again, they'll make them feel that it's sincere appreciation, sincere effort to make sure you understand their need for structure. If you're talking to someone that's got more of the influence or dominance profile, there you can see if the influencer, you'll probably see quite more noticeably if they're not that engaged, because they probably will be a bit more open about it, but also they might be retracting a little bit because they can't get that face-to-face recognition that they're used to. Any other questions that anybody else has? And if you're looking at more aspects of how, as a manager, to also maybe motivate your team as a total, in our next webinar session hosted by Ronaldo, we're going to be looking into, now we know about how to motivate ourselves, how to do things that can help us with our own frustrations, the other aspects that we talked about in previous webinars. Then we're going to really apply it to the team aspect. So how can we really bolster the team? Look at things like emotional resilience and motivation with the team context. Any other questions? Okay, so if you have no other questions, that's perfectly fine. Please feel free to reach out. So you have our email addresses, so please feel free to reach out. And if there's something that's popped up in your head after the session, we're always available to assist. But otherwise, thank you so much for attending. It's been a pleasure, and hope you guys have a wonderful week further.